نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل تعالوا أتل ما حرم ربكم عليكم ألا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تعقلون. Respectful friends, this verse which I have recited to you, the tafsir of which we have been doing for now, it being the third week, and it, along with the next two verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of 9 things which He is commanding us to do, and which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, so that we should stay away from. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of it has mentioned a 10th one. As I mentioned to you at the beginning of it, the virtues of these verses, wherein some Mufassirin mentioned that these 10 things were those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam with. And these are those 10 things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded all the previous Anbiya, and these were things which were in their shariat as well. So over the last couple of weeks we have been doing each one individually. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuting the claim of the mushrikeen and the I.T.A who had made various things haram upon them which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hadn't made haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses tells Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam that قُلْ تَعَالَوْا, tell them that come, أَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ, that I shall read to you that which your Rabb has made haram. Instead of the things that they had just made haram, the things that they had fabricated, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Allah Ta'ala says to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell them that I shall read to you those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. So those things which have been made haram from Allah. And it was Allah tushriku bihi shay'a. What was that? Not to do shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that not to ascribe anyone with Him. And in the first session of the tafsir of this verse, we've gone into detail with regards to the types of shirk and what shirk was. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and He commands towards doing good to the parents. And this was the tafsir, rather a quite lengthy tafsir last week's session, wherein I mentioned to you with regards to the rights of parents and doing good towards parents and fulfilling the rights of parents. Further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, which we should do today, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ, and do not kill your children min imlaq, out of fear of poverty. Do not kill your children out of poverty. As نحن نرزقكم وإياهم, is we who sustain them, who sustain you and them. Now, in the previous verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the rights of parents. Here now He mentions the rights of children, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and do not kill your children out of poverty, in fear of poverty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His creation of mankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has divided them into 2 genders, male and female. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His hikmah, through His wisdom, has made someone a male and he's made somebody else a female. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created both male and female because each one is in need of the other. A male is in need of the female and the female is in need of the male. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His wisdom, He has created us and He has put us and created us in the gender we are through His knowledge and through His wisdom. And then you will find that when husband and wife have children, again here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His grace and through His wisdom, whoever and whoever He has chosen, He has given children. There are those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given and granted them only male offsprings. Others where there is only female offsprings. Some families where there will be both male and female. And there may be those who, although having the desire and wanting to have children, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not blessed them with any offsprings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept the female barren. This is through the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It isn't something that we have a choice in. It isn't something that we can demand or something that we can ask for. It is whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for, that is what a person will get. It says those families where there is only daughters, girls and girls only daughters, no males at all. And there will be those families where there is only males. This is from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives how He wills. And whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants an offspring, whether it is a male or a female, a son or a daughter, this is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them offspring. This itself is a great ni'mat and bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, during the days of Jahiliyyah, and this is a practice that although the practice may not be so practiced or rarely practiced in our times, but the ideology or the thinking still remains. And that is, in the days of Jahiliyyah, the people would regard, or you could say the people would feel honored if a son would be born in the family. So if a son was born, this would be joyous for them and they would feel honored. And if in any home a daughter, a female would be born, they would regard that to be dishonor. They would regard that to be a curse, a bad omen and a bad thing to happen. In the days of Jahiliyyah, this was regarded to be a form of disgrace for a person, for the husband or the father, that in his home he has a daughter. So what they would do is that any home wherein a daughter would be born, they would kill her, or they would bury her alive, or kill her and then bury her, They would do these things. They would do this just so they are not tarnished, that their reputation should not be tarnished that they have daughters in their home. A child would be that in any home where they would be expecting a child, the father would go AWOL a few days in advance. So he would go undercover somewhere. So there's not so much interacting with people, so he'll keep a low profile. And then he'll wait to see what news he gets with regards to what has been born in the home. If it is a boy, a male, then he'll come out of hiding and he'll start celebrating and he'll give the glad tidings and news and spread it around. If it is a female, then he'll remain in hiding, we can say, and he'll keep a low profile for a few more days on, just to avoid people inquiring, asking as to what became and what was born. So because in order not to have to tell people, he would keep a low profile. And then when the time would come, they take the child and quietly bury the child. The burying of the child, this was common. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes reference to it. Many occasions in the Quran, which we shall do later on as well. So they would bury the child. Many of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala had also committed such. There were those people who had buried with their own hands up to 11 and 12 of their own daughters. For what reason? This is because to save themselves from this being dishonored or disgrace. They buried them alive. One Sahabi actually came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he mentioned to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam his own incident. That in my home as well a daughter was born, and she grew up as well. But each time seeing her, I felt disgrace. I felt disgraced each time I would see her. So on one occasion, I, out of some excuse, took her out of the house to separate her from her mother. And I took her into the fields, and there I had already dug up a pit. I brought her there and I mentioned to her that I'm digging up a well. And if she can assist and help me in it, so that if she can go at the bottom of the well and dig up the soil, send the bucket up, and actually take the bucket from on top. So she willingly accepted this, and she went down into the pit. He says when she went down from on top, I started throwing the soil in. I threw the soil in until it reached her knees. Now she's yelling and asking, what is this that you're doing? But because of my dislike for her and the anger that was in me, I continued throwing the soil into it. And then the soil came up to her chest. She kept on screaming and asking, but it wouldn't come into my head. I wouldn't listen to it. I just be oblivious of it because of my hatred and my dislike to her. And then I continued throwing the soil into this pit until it became level with her head. And I continued until I could not hear her at all. This is what I have done. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to him, what is this that you have done? What is this that you have done? And while Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said this, tears were flowing from his eyes and actually dropping on the ground. This is one incident. But this was a common practice amongst the Arabs of burying their daughters alive. Even now people will show you places in Makkah al-Mukarramah which were known for where people would bury their daughters alive. Now one is, killing the daughter itself is something beyond our comprehension. But here the daughter would be alive and they would be burying her alive. And this would be solely because of this dislike for women. Or it is not for women but dislike for daughters. Now this dislike for daughters, and why they would carry this task, this deed out, is because of a few couple of reasons. One is, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes reference to here, is that they would fear with regards to fear poverty with regards to daughters. Because they think that sons, they bring barakat, because a son, he will grow, and when he grows up, he will go and work, so he'll bring income into the family. Whereas daughters, they need looking after. Sons, they can grow up and look after themselves, but daughters, they need looking after. They need looking after, they cannot go out and work. In those days, they wouldn't go out to work. So for that, the father would have to look after them. Because of this burden, they would dislike having daughters. And it was a normal, people would regard it to be an honor if they had sons in the family. And if it is daughters, it would mean they do not have that honor of having a son in the family who will maintain the family, the lineage. So they would regard this to be a form of disgrace. And there were those who believed, as we know that the mushrikeen of Makkah, the mushrikeen, they believed that the angels, na'udhu billah, were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their belief was that the angels were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you find that the Yahud said Uzair ibn Allah, they said Uzair is the son of Allah. The Isa had mentioned, they said Isa was ibn Allah, the son of Allah. So when the mushrikeen fell a bit left out as well, that if they were all attributed offsprings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so then they went and said, well, if that's the case, then the angels are the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, that the angels are the daughters of Allah. So there are those who have this aqidah, that when angels are the daughters of Allah, then daughters should only be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for that reason they would kill their daughters, saying that because they are meant only for Allah, we are sending them back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this aqidah of theirs itself was incorrect and corrupt. So what they would do is they would bury their daughters alive. And this was a common thing in those days. It wasn't something that people would frown at or look down at. Obviously the mother would feel it, but the family, the father, he wouldn't. Because he would feel disgraced with this matter. Now we find that although this isn't practiced in our times, that we know of, and it is something that is common within us, but what is common in us is this injustice to daughters, or that natural dislike of having daughters. In a home you will find, where a son is born, the father will be more joyous. He'll celebrate on it. He'll give out some sweet meat, and he'll do the aqiqah as well with great pride and honor. And he'll mention to everybody that a son has been born, and the family will tell everybody a son has been born, a son is born. Meaning that the pleasure of when a son is born is greater. And if a daughter is born, then even in our times, now we're talking about our people as well, this is what we do. We do not spread that message out too much. We just keep it quiet. Somebody asks, it's the daughter Alhamdulillah. And that's it. We won't spread out the aqiqah. We won't give out so much the sweet meat. We won't be as joyous and happy as when a son is born. In so many families, the husband looks down at the wife or he even threatens the wife of divorce if she continues to give birth to daughters. So many mother-in-laws, families also ostracize such women who only have given birth to women, to females, to daughters. This is common in our times, I am talking about. In other countries, in our culture, in our places, it may be worse than this. But if we're talking about here in the UK, in our communities, this is still right, this is still happening. And there are such cases wherein, just because, and people even say that, who come to me and say, make dua that we have a son, and they're saying this for that reason, maybe the husband is saying because he's got pressure from his family people. That his parents are now putting pressure on him, that why is it that, that she's, and looking down as if it is the fault of the wife, that she's just giving birth to daughters. Especially this is the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It isn't something that she can plan, it's something that she can do, and change and choose what gender child they want. And this is the hikmah of Allah. As if that was possible, then you'd only have men. There'd only be men. So this is the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this we find is still common in us. And where there are sons and daughters, preference is given to the sons. More is done for the sons than the daughters. So we may not be practicing as the people of Jahiliyyah were of actually killing their children alive, but we still have the same thinking as they did. Where we show more enjoyment, more pleasure, and more happiness at the birth of a son than that of a daughter. As I mentioned, the place wherein the husband even threatens the wife that if this time you're going to give birth to a daughter, then I'm going to divorce you. And there are so many such incidents that are happening. She may have given birth to a daughter in the past, a couple of daughters. Now he wants a son. Now he wants a son. And he's threatening her that if you don't give birth to a son, then I'll divorce you. So they look down at such homes wherein there is only daughters and no sons. And then they fear the fact that now I am the father, there's no sons who's going to continue the progeny. There's no sons who are going to go out and work and earn. Now you have daughters, as the case of until they're married, we're going to have to look after them. We're going to have to continue providing for them. Because of this burden, people look down at having daughters. Whereas you find in our Sharia and from the Hadith, the amount of virtue and fazail Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned with regards to daughters that has not been mentioned with regards to sons. The fazail actually mentioned with regards to daughters. Why? Because one of the mission of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to remove the customs of Jahiliyyah, to remove the beliefs of Jahiliyyah, to totally change that. And for that reason also you find that in the home of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Nabi Kareem had sons and had daughters. But those who lived were only his daughters. Those who lived were only his daughters. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam had 4 daughters: Sayyidina Zainab, Sayyidina Kulthum, Sayyidina Ruqayya, and Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And from these, Sayyidina Zainab, Ruqayya and Kulthum, they passed away a little early. Although in their late life, but a bit early on. Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala passed away 6 months after Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we find there is more mention of Sayyidina Fatima after Nabuwwat, from the time of Nabuwwat, in the various books. And you find Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself showed so much love and affection towards Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, that whenever he would go out on any journey, the last person he would meet would be Sayyidina Fatima, and the first person he would meet would be Sayyidina Fatima. That's how much affection and love Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself showed towards Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. And aside from that, there are so many other instances as well. We find that bondship between Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala. The time when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned to her and indicated to her that he would be leaving this world very soon. To which Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha became greatly upset hearing this. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam called her again and whispered to her something, on which she became happy, she became pleased. But this was a secret. It was a secret between the father and daughter. And at that time Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was there, and she seen these things. She asked Sayyidina Fatima what was mentioned. She said, I can't disclose it to you. And now Sayyidina Aisha is wondering here as well. Obviously a woman is a woman at the end of the day. That what is happening here, this secrecy between father and daughter. She felt a little left out there at that time. Then after the demise of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she came to Sayyidina Fatima and she said that, I think from all women I have more rights that I should know. Now you should tell me what was the secrecy between you and Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That at one time he says something to you, you become upset. And then he says something to you, you become pleased. To which then Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anha mentioned that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam indicated to me that now his mission has come to an end. And very soon he'll meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to which then I felt pain. And saying this, the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to me, O Fatima, does not give you pleasure that you will be Sayyidun Nisa'i fil Jannah, that you will be the leader of the women in Jannah. Which she found pleasure in that. And also it indicated that she would be the first from the family of Nabi Kareem to meet with Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 6 months later, she also passed away. So here this was that bondship between Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't even mention that to Sayyidina Aisha or any others, but he mentioned that to Sayyidina Fatima. And he even gives his own daughter that position. And not because she is the daughter of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because obviously she was in the footsteps of the father. Fatima was worthy of it. Then he mentioned that she will be granted the position of being the leader of the women in Jannah. That is one. And not just because she was the daughter of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself mentions, that even if Fatima is in need of any punishment, then even she would not be spared of any punishment. And then the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that even Fatima won't get salvation in the grave if she says that she is the son, she says that she is the daughter of Muhammad. Then nobody will get salvation because they are the son or daughter of any person, or they are the father of so person. Because of that, because of the lineage, they won't get salvation. In Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, even if it is Fatima. So she earned this right. But here we see that bondship between Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after all, if we had to see the perfect example of a husband, it was Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you were to see the perfect example of a father, it was Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The perfect example of a man, it was Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The perfect example of any human being, it was Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam came in order to eradicate and remove the false aqidah of people and the false practices of people. So we find that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his own life showed us a perfect example with regards to treatment to daughters. And then we find the hadith as well. When one riwayat, Sayyidina Abu Sa'id Khudri radiallahu ta'ala mentioned Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever has 3 daughters or 3 sisters, or whoever has 2 daughters and 2 sisters, and he brings her up, he sees towards the nourishment, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enter him into Jannah. Another riwayah of Mufti Zubair Dud makes Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that whoever has 3 sisters or 3 daughters, or 2 daughters and 2 sisters, and he nurtures them, he does their Tarbiyah, and he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to their rights, and he regards it as a privilege to see towards their nourishment, and he makes the best of their Tarbiyah, then that person will be entered into Jannah. In another hadith of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions the similar things, that whoever sees towards their upbringing, and just not that, but he gives them upbringing, good upbringing as well. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned whoever has 3 daughters or 3 sisters. A Sahabi asked of Prophet of Allah, what if he has 2? Because he mentioned 3. If he has 3, then he'll enter into Jannah. So the Sahabi asked, what if he has 2? Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that if he has 2 sisters and 2 daughters and he sees towards them, he'll enter into Jannah. And then the Sahabi asked, Allah, what if he has only 1? Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that even if he has only 1 and he does this, he'll be entered into Jannah. For doing what? Knowing the fact that this is something that people look down at, people will find it difficult. When Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that whoever has 3 daughters or 2 daughters or 1 daughter or sisters, but he looks after them, he brings them up. Nourishing means that he provides for them. And at the same time, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that he gives them their tarbiyat as well, so he sees towards the upbringing. Not that you just see towards the upbringing of the sons, training them, educating them, that they will be the ones who will be of use. They are the ones who will be of use. The daughters are not going to come up and use, so you just, keep them on one side. And you don't see towards their nourishment, upbringing and tarbiyat. But you see towards all these things. And you do it in the best form. And you don't regard them to be a burden upon you. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that even if it is 1, then you will enter into Jannah. This is the first thing Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given with regards to entrance into Jannah. In another narration, Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha mentions that on one occasion, a mother came to me, and she had her child with her, and she came asking for something. All I had was just 1 date. So I gave her that 1 date. She took that 1 date and she fed that date to her child. She fed it. In one narration is that she had 2. And then she split it in half and she gave her children. She didn't have any of it. She said that when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam came in the evening, came home, I mentioned this, that she was in need. She had nothing at all, she was hungry, but I had only 1 day and she gave that to her daughters. So which Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that whatever hardship one undertakes in looking after the daughters, those daughters will become a barrier between them and Jannah. Between them and Jannah. It will become a barrier between them and Jannah. In another narration, Nabi Kareem Aisha mentions that the mother came, she had 2 children with her, and I had 3 dates, so I gave her 3 dates. So she gave 1 date to the one, another date to the other one, and the 3rd one she was just about to take that and put that into her mouth, wherein one of the child asked for it. One of the child asked for it. So she split that in 2, and she gave that to the daughters, and she didn't take off the date. So when I saw this, I was so overwhelmed by it. And when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, I had mentioned this to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he had mentioned similar again, that whoever in bringing up their daughters undertakes any hardship, their test is put on them, as was at that time, and they see towards the rights of the daughters, then those daughters will become a means of a barrier between them and Jahannam. That is for, and these facilities for who? For those who are looking after the daughters. Who's looking after the daughters. In the same way we find. So that Anas radiallahu ta'ala mentions riwayat of Muslim, that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, Man ala jarayni hatta tablugha, that a person who looks after and sees towards 2 daughters, until they become baligh, until they become mature, he nourishes them, he sees them, he makes it tarbiyah. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, Ja'a yawm al-qiyamati huwa wa ana kahatayn. that person will come on the day of resurrection, that he will be with me like this. That he will be with me like this, and Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam joined his two fingers together. His index and middle finger together, that he will be with me like this. So from this hadith we find that there are three virtues of a person who has daughters and looks after the daughters, and he feels pleasure in having daughters as well. He does not regard it to be a burden upon him. Not one who feels a burden and still looks after them, those who doesn't feel the burden. With pleasure looks after them, nourishes them, brings them up. There are three virtues from the hadith. One is Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that they'll be saved from the fire of Jahannam. They'll be saved from the fire of Jahannam. And an example of this is that there was a person who had two daughters. He had already had two daughters. He was upset with his wife with regards to this. And now she was expecting the third daughter. He mentioned to his wife, and he had even warned her that if you give birth to another daughter, I'll be divorcing you. I will divorce you. He says it was very close towards the time of her giving birth. Wherein he mentions, the same night I saw a dream. And in that dream, it was shown to me that I was due to be sentenced or sent towards the fire of Jahannam. And then, when I was due to be thrown in the fire of Jahannam, my eldest daughter came and she quickly grabbed hold of my hand. She grabbed hold of my hand, and she saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is my father saving from the fire of Jahannam. But then it was destined that I should go into the fire of Jahannam. And then when that word was given, my second daughter came, and she grabbed hold of the other hand and said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this is my father, for my sake do not throw him into the fire of Jahannam. For my sake do not throw him into the fire of Jahannam. When he saw this dream, he realized and he understood that it was these daughters that were becoming a means, would be a means for him, a barrier for him in the fire, from being saved from the fire of Jahannam. He woke up in the morning and he says to his wife, it will be a great blessing to me if you give birth to a daughter. It will be a great blessing if you give birth to a daughter. So this is what Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions, that there will become a barrier between the parents and the fire of Jahannam. In the other narration, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that whoever brings them up, nurtures them, he'll enter into Jannah. Jannah will become wajib upon them. So one is a person who is saved from the fire of Jahannam. The other is that he'll be entered into Jannah. And entrance into Jannah indicates towards the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that a person can acquire the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through and by means of his daughters. And the other virtue is that he'll enter into Jannah with Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it is mentioned that he'll come on the day of Qiyamah, that we will be hardened, we will be like this. So it will be impossible that Nabi Kareem will be in the Jannah and he'll be left separated. Whoever you'll be resurrected with, you'll be with them throughout. So who would not want that I am resurrected, I am at this close, not even in distance. Some of us mentioned in distance is just this, which is very minute, or it means absolute no distance, that you'll be absolute with Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. On what virtue? On what amal? Just on the fact that this person had daughters, because Nabi Kareem knew that these were the aqidah and the beliefs of Jahiliyyah. So in order to remove that, these same daughters are a means of mercy and rahmah for the parents. They are mercy and rahmah for the parents. So rather you find that we should be showing more enjoyment and more pleasure on the birth of daughters than we should be on sons. There is no doubt a person can understand the benefits of having sons as well, of the help that they can give to the parents, because of the nature and the strength of sons. So it is natural that a person would feel pleasure in having sons, but it should not mean that if you do have daughters, that there should be a decrease in that pleasure, or a person feels hard done by, or a person should feel disgraced just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted him daughters. But it should be a case wherein in others feel that now we have daughters, we now need to look for husbands for them, son-in-laws. They regard that to be a big burden. So there's many things that people look at and think that these are things which are burden for us, and because of that they find it disgraceful if they have daughters. So this is the virtue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. And Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has mentioned with regards to where daughters are born in families. Now one thing which is very very important is that throughout, whoever let us give, daughters or give sons and daughters, then we should always maintain equality. But what happens is, from the time of birth we find that there isn't equality. From the time of birth, already in our pleasure and enjoyment itself, we're showing more enjoyment as the birth of a son rather than the daughter. And then as they grow on, we find that the parents may give more time or make more effort on the sons rather than the daughter. This shouldn't be the case. To that extent, that when it comes to expressing love as well, even there should be equality. With regards to having love, this is something which is not in a person's own control. It isn't within our control. How much? So a parent may naturally have love for one of his child more than the other. And this you can't control. It's something which you cannot control. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot control. But yes, what you can control is the expressing of love. The showing of love, this can be expressed. But unfortunately what we find is that whichever child the parent may be inclined towards, have more attachment towards or love towards, they'll express and show the love for that one as well. And this then already creates the inequality between the children, and this is very wrong. You can have this natural love more somewhere. Somebody may love the son more, the daughter more, and this is how people do. Those who are closer to the son, some may be closer to the daughters. But when it comes to expressing of the love, a person needs to be very equal in the expressing of love. And then we find another ill that we have in our society is that we tend to deprive the daughters from their share of inheritance. Something again which was from the days of Jahiliyyah, which Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Deen Islam itself eradicated that. There are times when women had no rights to inherit. Islam had given them their rights. As a mother, what her rights are to inherit. As a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, Islam gave them their shares. Now in our times what happens is that the parents, they spend on her at the time of her marriage in the form of her dowry, or they'll say jahaz, whatever they spend on her marriage time. And then they feel that because we've spent on her already at that time, now there's no need for us to give her from her share of inheritance, because we've already given it to her. We've already spent on her. And another very important thing is that whether it is a marriage of the daughter or the son's expenditure should be the same. And this should be at all times. At all times, if you give presents, gifts to the children, there should be equality in that. How much you spend on them, there should be equality in that as well. With an exception of where there is a necessity. There might be a necessity where one needs something more. One's needs may be more, and that is different. That is obvious that sometimes there will be times wherein one may need more expenditure on. One you might have to spend more on. The needs differ, that is different. But where it is something where you're just gifting them and giving from your choice, the equality is also very, very important. Not that you just give one side and not the other. Similarly, you find that when it comes to whatever you give your children during your lifetime, and a very, very important masla here as well, which a lot of people don't understand. One is that whatever belongs to the father, he is the owner of that. Whilst he's alive, the children, first of all, they cannot demand that, oh father, before you die, before you leave, give us our share. They've got no rights to saying that at all, because it doesn't belong to them. They say, give us our share. It's not your share. Whilst he is alive, it's not your share, it's his, so you have no rights to demand or ask for it. First of all. And if the father, whilst he is alive, does give anything to his children, although it is permissible for him to give whoever he wants how much, it is very, very important there as well that he should be equal. He should be equal. Not that he gives everything to his sons and he doesn't give anything to his daughters. Think that they'll be in more need and he gives everything to the sons, puts it over into the name of the son. No. If he gives whilst he is alive, then he should be equal in it. Very, very important. Although it is permissible. And some mention that the share which has been stipulated for the daughters is that if the deceased leaves sons and daughters and she gets half of the sons, so it's a case of 2 to the ratio of 1. Then the son will get 2 and she will get 1. So he gets the full share and she will get half of that. So there's a hikmah behind that as well. But it does not mean that because of that, whilst alive you have to follow that as well. Some fuqaha mentioned that whilst alive it is permissible for you to do that. But that is for after the demise, that is the shares. Whilst alive, the father should be equal there as well. And when, a very very important masla, which should be mentioned at this time, which a lot of people do wrong is, remember when you give something over to somebody whilst you are alive, it is very very important that will only be complete when you give that person control over it. They have to actually have possession of it. And this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. Which means that if I have something and I want to give it to somebody, I want to give this as a gift to Shahzad, then I have to make him the owner of it, hand it over to him. Just the way in transaction is ijab and kabul, acceptance and proposal. I need to give it to him, he needs to take it, and he makes qabza of it, he takes ownership of it. Then only is that gift that hiba given. That the wahib and the mawhub, the one who is being given to and the wahib who is given has to take control of it. Now what happens here we find is, that the father will say that I'm leaving so and so property to this son, that property for him, and this is for him, that is for him. He'll say that while he is alive. Or that I'm handing over the house, or he signs the papers over to the son that the house is for the son, or whatever he does. But at the same time, the father still has control over that house. Or he still maintains control, he gives it over, but he still possesses control over the property. If that is the case, then that has not been gifted. Which means in those circumstances, if the father does die, after his demise, the son cannot claim ownership of it. It will still then be divided amongst the heirs, although he may have said that the father signed it, he put the property into my name, or he said that it is mine. So by merely saying that is not sufficient. You have to make that person now the owner of it. So if the father gives a house and he relinquishes control over it, he can stay in it. But now he's handed it over, he's given the keys over, he's given ownership over to the child, then only has he gifted it to the child. Just by merely verbally saying, that is not gifting it. Which is after his demise, it will not be permissible for the son to take control of it, and after the demise of the father, that needs to be distributed still amongst the shares. Very important masala which people are not aware of. And as again what happens is, a lot of people mention this, especially when they do come for mashwara with regards to wills and that, when they say, well, daughter, we already gave her share. People say, we've already given the daughter her share. So remember, what you've given whilst you are alive, that is the hiba you've given as a gift. That does not deprive her of a share after the demise. Which means that no matter what they may have given, the mother may have given her jewelry and whatever to the daughter whilst alive, after her or the husband, the mother or the father's demise, she will still get her share of the estate according to what her share is. She will still get that, irrelevant of whether something was given to her whilst alive or not. There are a few masail which are very very important for us to be aware of, because these are common practices, common things in us. Now coming back to the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ, and do not kill your children out of poverty, fear of poverty. So what was how they would kill the daughters in those times? And if in our times we can take it this way, that it is not permissible for a person to terminate pregnancy out of fear of poverty. Out of fear of poverty. Or for a person to practice birth control out of fear of poverty. That we can't afford another child. That at this moment we cannot afford another child. Later on we find then we will have children. So we can't afford a child now. So for that reason what happens is that Allah Ta'ala mentions, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ. Why? نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ. Why? Because we are the ones who sustain you and sustain them as well. Risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one comes with his or her own risk. In another hadith, the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you your risk because of the weak one. The risk is given to you because of the weak ones. that it is because of your children or because of the daughters that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you your rizq. Because making you a means for the weak person. There is a yatim, an orphan, and you help them, it means Allah ta'ala is giving you that rizq, so He is giving you so that you can help the poor. So it is through that poor and the weak person that you have been given your rizq. So we are in need of them. If it isn't for them, we may not be given the rizq. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ, that do not fear. And you will find that those who do not have iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or those who have iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but do not have this faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will fear having children because of this reason alone, that we cannot afford. And it is for that reason that you find there's so many people those who do not believe in Allah, that Allah is the Razik, the sustainer, the one who gives. Just the way they plan their careers and so many other things, you find husband and wife will even plan when they will have children. This is when they plan everything else. So look, at this moment, we can't afford this subscription, we can't afford this membership, we can't afford that at this moment, but if we work a bit on, we get promotion, then maybe we can pay off this, we can pay off that, and then we can take off this, we can do that. They plan things according to how, and in that planning as well, it's case of, look, we can't have children now. We can't have children now. Maybe after a couple of years when both husband and wife are working and they're earning so much, and then then it's allowed for us. Now we've got one child, we're spending so much already on that child, so till again we're not earning more than that, we can't plan another child. So they plan having children just because of this reason, that we can't afford to have another child. But some may say that in this country is the opposite. You might get opposite cases, wherein they want children just for the sake of risk. They've taken it, making so much amal upon it, that they've taken it so much, thinking that more children and maybe our risk is through those children. So there will be those as well. Then what happens in that is, obviously, we see what we see around us, where there's no where kids are having kids. Where kids are having kids, when that kids' tarbiyah hasn't been done, how they will make tarbiyah of the kid that they have. So that is the issue, obviously. But people will fear having children because of risk, that we can't afford another child. How can we afford the thing, the need of the child? Well, Allah Ta'ala mentioned that, don't worry about that. Why? Because I am the one who nourishes you and them. You are living, who's nourishing you? The one who is nourishing you will nourish the newcomer as well. Each one comes with the risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then whatever we have and whatever we're going to give that child is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us a means for that child, and He is giving us so that we are means for that child. Whereas it isn't us that are providing for the child, it is Allah who is providing for the child, but He has just made us a means for it. He's just made us a means for it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that to us, and you'll find in the world as well. There's so many places where poor people have children, and there are many children as well. But still, alhamdulillah, not every children are dying. They are poor, but they still are having children. And alhamdulillah, the children are living. They're not dying because they're born in a poor family. It's a different case wherein aid and need doesn't get to people and the condition becomes, but this has got nothing to do with the fact that why they have children. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, that do not fear. Do not kill them. And the same means that do not avoid having children as well. Do not avoid having children because of that fear of money alone, of risk alone, that we cannot afford them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly mentions that نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ. And obviously this is yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we should all have, obviously, that He is Razik. He is the one who gives risk. He is the one who gives risk. Yes, a father, he makes an effort, he goes to work and he earns and he receives towards them, and he brings home the butter and bread. He realizes, look, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who's given me the job where I've been paid so I can bring this. But if there are ones that can be taken away from me, so He is the one in actual fact who is sustaining us. So at all times, whatever the condition is, each one will get and receive his and her risk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one. So out of fear of this, a person should not kill their children, or have that fear of having children, of this fear that how we are going to maintain them, how we are going to be able to sustain them, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides. So here as defined, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again is mentioning with regards to those practices which were common in the days of Jahiliyyah, which are common now as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ, which shows that the aqidah of the people of Jahiliyyah, or their actions with regards to their daughters, which was something which was incorrect, that is something that although we have abstained from, but we still have the same thing in our ideology. So we should abstain from that. And wherever, and one best way, as I mentioned, for us to change our mentality, our thinking, is to show greater enjoyment on the birth of daughters. On the birth of daughters. I remember when my daughter was born, one of our Musalli's elderly Musalli, soon as we met, before he asked, I had mentioned to him that Alhamdulillah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted a daughter. Now you see, afterwards he came to me and he said that I found that very different. And I was very pleased with it. Which he mentioned why? Because in our community, where a daughter is born, the father will never himself come and say that we will bless your daughter. He'll leave it until somebody may ask him that what has happened. So he won't himself show that initiative to actually come and say and mention it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with a daughter. If it is a son, then he'll do that. So it just shows us that this was just a few couple of years ago. So this is how we still are, this is the thinking that we still possess now as well. Despite the fact that we are born bred Muslims, we still have this aqidah, or this thought and this customs within us, and that is very, very important for us to remove. For that reason, we has mentioned all the fazilat and the fazail with regards to having daughters. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the understanding, and Allah ta'ala enable us to make amal upon whatever we have heard today. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.